It's a standoff with Kane, Spurs and Manchester City. The second day in a row, Harry Kane has failed to turn up for Tottenham Hotspur training in an effort to get his desired move to Pep Guardiola and Manchester City and the chance of potentially winning a trophy. No offence to Spurs, but you aren't going to win a trophy next season, are you? Let's be honest. So what is the situation? What is going on with Harry Kane? How has the situation progressed? How have we got this far? Is what Harry Kane is doing right? Is it wrong? Is loyalty dead in football? Should loyalty be a one-way street, or does it work both ways? Is any of this relevant at all? Will anything happen? Who knows? Well, let's find out. The date right now is the 3rd of August 2021. And yesterday it was Monday, because today is Tuesday, and on Monday Harry Kane failed to turn up for training at Tottenham Hotspur, and today, as I say, is Tuesday, and he's once again failed to turn up to training at Spurs. Now this is a massive shift away from what we would usually associate Harry Kane with, being, you know, this model professional. For example, when Mourinho was in his last days at Spurs, Harry Kane was the last one to stay loyal to the manager. Rightly or wrongly, there is this aura, this image of Harry Kane as this model, professional captain, ambassador of the club. So as I say, this is a very interesting move from Kane, and I also didn't think he had it in him. I didn't think it would get to this stage, but Kane feels like this is his only chance to actually get his desired move to Manchester City and out of Tottenham Hotspur. Now, as reported by The Athletic, Harry Kane the other day actually spoke to a senior non-English player at Manchester City, expressing his desire to join Manchester City. Now, I don't know who that player is. No specific player was named in that story. However, senior non-English player to me suggests either Kevin De Bruyne or, more likely, I think, Fernandinho, because Fernandinho is the captain of the club. He's club captain, and he is associated with sort of these ambassadorial roles for City. So I can really see that being the player Kane would have spoken to. Although Kane has spoken highly of De Bruyne in the past, you know, being the perfect midfielder to play alongside. So maybe it was De Bruyne he actually spoke to. I'm not sure. It's sort of by the by anyway. But it is very interesting that Kane made that direct approach to a City player expressing his desire to leave. And actually, before Kane went on strike at Spurs, not turning up to training, players in and around the City camp were already aware that Kane was going to do this. So again, Kane has clearly been in an extensive communication with either players or other people at Manchester City, expressing not only his desire to leave, but also his plan, a battle plan to try to force a move away from Spurs. So how have Spurs reacted, and is Kane's move going to actually achieve anything, or is he locked down by his contract? Well, Spurs haven't reacted very well to this at all. They've internally described him as unprofessional, and they are furious at his actions and the way he's handled the situation. Now, I find the whole unprofessional jibe very hypocritical and annoying, because, as I discussed earlier, Kane is portrayed as his model professional, this really being the only strike against his record. So I really don't like the fact that the club are really trying to paint him in this light. They basically got him trapped there. We'll talk about the contract later that he did sign, to be fair, but I think how Spurs have handled the situation actually is worse than the way Kane have handled the situation. Kane has always maintained that even though he's locked into a contract, they signed in 2018 a 6-year contract, so under the 3 years on his contract to take him through to 2024, I believe. But there's always been, from Kane's understanding anyway, this gentleman's agreement with Levy that should Kane want to leave, Spurs and Daniel Levy would allow Kane his wish. They would allow him to leave. Now, the club and Levy are denying this gentleman's agreement exists at all. So, and based on the documentary, the All or Nothing documentary on Amazon Prime with Spurs, the way that the insight it gave us into Levy's psyche and mentality and as a person, I know who I'm going to believe on that side. I'm pretty sure there was a gentleman's agreement, and Harry Kane was right in thinking there was this agreement, and Levy's just gone, well, sod that. Nothing's in writing, you can't bind me to anything, so I'm just going to deny it ever existed. Would not put it past Levy at all, like I say, based on his previous track record and based on that documentary either. He just seems like that sort of business person, and from a business perspective, you aren't going to honour a gentleman's agreement. Like, why should you? He's your star asset. You're not going to get rid of him that easily. Spurs' position in terms of selling Kane, even if they were willing to sell Kane, is that frankly they aren't willing to sell Kane to another Premier League club. This is very similar to their stance when they sold Modric and when they sold Gareth Bale. They were dead against offloading him to another Premier League club. In fact, I believe that they actually would have got more money for Modric had they allowed Chelsea to sign him. However, they actually, what's the saying? They cut off their nose to spite their face, and for less money a year later, he went off to Real Madrid, and it's a very similar situation here. If a bid of around 150 million came in for Kane from a foreign club, so whether that's someone like Bayern Munich, Barca, Real Madrid, PSG, whoever, then Spurs would consider selling him. But as it stands, if a 150 million bid comes in from City, United, Chelsea, whoever, Spurs aren't interested. Well, specifically Levy isn't interested. But the issue for Harry Kane, it's not just about leaving Spurs. City really are the only viable option. Real Madrid, Barcelona are in the mud financially. We've discussed that on this channel already. PSG would be the potential only option for him to go to, but Kane's heart is set on Man City, and I don't even know if PSG are that interested in Harry Kane. When you've got Neymar and Mbappe, do you really need like another absolute star in that front line? Probably not. And as I say, Kane's heart is set on Manchester City, so for Kane it's almost like a City or bust situation. But the City standpoint is they actually, for some reason, they're quite confident they are going to sign Harry Kane, even though they're also confident of signing Jack Grealish for in and around £100 million. We have discussed on this channel previously how it is financially possible for City to do that. Money isn't an issue there, like they can financially afford it, even in line with FFP. But it's just really interesting to me that City are so confident, and they've only put in a bid of, I believe, £100 million, and they may be willing to go up to around £130 million. The reports of that £160 million bid, as far as I'm aware, was that just that, it was paper talk, it was a story. The only official bid being the £100 million City put in, and as I say, there's a suspicion that they would be willing to pay up to £130 million, but that is still below Levy's £150 million valuation, and that's also from a foreign club, so you might anticipate Levy expecting even more than £150 million for a Premier League club to sign Harry Kane. So not sure how this is going to end, honestly. I think it's definitely going to continue until the end of the season, until the end of the transfer window. But what really makes me think that Spurs are going to get their way and Levy will get his way, the track record of his stubbornness, we've seen that. But Spurs aren't really making any post-Harry Kane plans. They aren't lining up other strikers to look at, so that tells me that they've got no mindset of we even need to plan for life without Harry Kane next season, because you'd think if they were planning for that, then they would be looking out for some alternatives. The fact they aren't, to me, suggests he is going to stay in their eyes, even though the squad are resigned to him leaving. So if Harry Kane does stay, I'm not saying it's going to be like a toxic environment created by Kane, but it's going to be a very odd environment when you know that your star man and your captain doesn't want to be at your club anymore. What sort of motivation and like mentality is that going to give the players for the following season? It's not a good start. A ball hasn't even been kicked, and it's already a net negative for Spurs for next season. But unfortunately for Kane, he is sort of the creator of his own downfall here, because as I alluded to earlier, in 2018 he did sign a big lucrative contract. I think it was more than it was either double or more than double his wages at the time, but that locked him in for 6 years, and it meant that he couldn't leave. Spurs have a track record of doing this. It's very smart. The way they do business is that they give little incremental increases in salary every 1, 2, 3 years, but then obviously adding time onto the contract. So that's how they were able to keep all these players for so long. But then other players like Eriksen and Vertonghen realised that, hey, if we just say no to this salary increase, then therefore the contract won't get extended, and then we can leave on our own terms. And that's exactly what happened with Eriksen. He got his move to Inter Milan. We saw that in the Amazon Prime documentary. So he was quite very wise with his decision to not sign that contract, because short term he may lose a bit of money, but long term he gets what he wants. Like I say, this is Spurs' procedure. That's how they're able to keep their wage bill so relatively low compared to the other Premier League clubs. They offer these slight increases, but frequently, but that does lock their players in contract-wise. Now, Spurs have sold to Man City in relatively recent years in terms of big money moves, Kyle Walker being the obvious example, but very different situation because Pochettino, manager at the time, he was quite happy for Walker to leave. Spurs felt they had other decent options there. Kieran Trippier was still at the club at that point, for example, but the negotiations for Walker were not easy by any means. They were incredibly tricky for Manchester City to get the player they wanted, and for Kane it's going to be even worse. So like I say, I don't really know where this confidence is coming from City, but fair enough, we'll have to see what happens. Unfortunately for Kane, due to that contract, he has very little power in this situation, and this not turning up to training move is basically him trying to come up with some form of leverage, trying to give him some form of power in a situation where he's basically powerless. He's trying to force Spurs into the move by basically saying, look, I've always been professional, but I ain't turning up to training. That's a big statement from me. Please give me what I want. But that's it. He hasn't actually got any other real power. This gentleman's agreement, not only is it being denied by Levy, but even if it wasn't being denied by Levy, he could just say, well, it's not in writing. You've got no evidence of it. So I'm just not going to adhere to it. And ultimately, I don't really see this stunt that Harry Kane's pulled doing anything long term. He has also said he will be coming back into training by the end of the week. This was just some sort of like power play move, not turning up to training for the first few days, just to make that statement of his intent and his wish, his desire to leave the club. Ultimately, doesn't really have any power, no leverage. The contract is the contract, and unless an agreement can be made between City and Spurs, an agreement that Levy is happy with, because at the end of the day, he will be the man with the final decision. Harry Kane isn't going anywhere. And honestly, for Spurs at this point, Kane doing something he's never done before by not turning up to training, it almost might be better for Spurs to like cut their losses and just say, right, he wants to leave now. If we force him to stay, is he going to have the best season with us? Like, he's not going to play poorly on purpose, but mentally, is he going to be switched on as much as he would normally be? Probably not. Could impact the dressing room negatively if they all know their captain, talisman, leader just wants out of the club. So what are they really playing for? Also very tricky with a new manager coming in Nuno. So I think it actually might be seen as smarter to allow Harry Kane his wish to leave Spurs. The fans at this point, the Tottenham fans, I don't think any of them would genuinely begrudge Harry Kane leaving, because he's been very loyal certainly, I don't even think this is like a disloyal act, but he's certainly been loyal up until a couple of days ago. He stuck with the club. He definitely could have tried to force a move much earlier. No offense to Spurs, but Harry Kane is, some would say, he's the best striker in the world. I'd say he's definitely at least the second best striker in the world at the moment. He has to be competing not only for Premier League titles, but also for Champions League titles, realistically. Spurs are going into I believe they're going into the UEFA Conference League. A player of Harry Kane's standing needs to be in a better competition. Are Spurs genuinely going to compete for the title next season? No. They can't even win a League Cup or an FA Cup. Why should Harry Kane stay? And this is the thing about loyalty. Loyalty goes both ways. It's not just Harry Kane gives club loyalty, club doesn't have to give Harry Kane any loyalty. Harry Kane's been very loyal to Spurs, as I've just discussed, helped them get to a Champions League final, helped them compete in the Premier League for, I think they genuinely competed for like 2 seasons, didn't they? The season where Leicester won it, certainly. They were genuinely in that title race. Harry Kane's been very loyal, and now he's like, right, I've been with the club for years, please let me go. We've got a gentleman's agreement. Please show me that loyalty back. And the club have gone, no, we're not going to show you that. We're not going to show you that loyalty. Even if there wasn't a gentleman's agreement, they still refuse to show any form of willingness to back down from their stance. They're being very hard in their stance, and they aren't willing to give up any ground, because that's just the sort of person Levy is. From a business perspective, great, but we really shouldn't be having a go. I don't even know if anyone is. I'm sure the people at the club are. Really shouldn't be having a go at Kane or questioning his loyalty, because like I say, loyalty works both ways. You can't just expect Kane to be loyal, but then you not be loyal back to him. Do you know what I mean? It's give and take with that. It's not a one-way street. It does work both ways. So that's the Harry Kane situation in sum. Do I think that Harry Kane's antics are going to do anything? Do I think Harry Kane's going to be able to force that move to Man City this transfer window? No. Next season, I still really foresee Harry Kane being a Spurs player. I think next season, when he's got 2 years left on his contract, Spurs will not be willing to, and assuming Harry Kane doesn't sign an extension, I don't think Spurs will be willing to lose out on that investment, because then the year after, 1 year left on his contract, he's worth such little money in terms of market value. So I think Spurs will have to cash in next season at the latest. But I really do see Spurs keeping Kane, basically forcing him to stay for this season coming up. Season after, I can definitely see him moving to a club like Manchester City. Maybe once the COVID situations died down a bit in terms of the financial hit the clubs have taken, Spurs in particular, then I think they will be willing to let Kane go. Let me know what you think though, guys. Do you think that Kane is right to do what he's doing? Do you think he's unprofessional? Do you think loyalty still exists in football? Do you think it should exist in football? Do you think that Harry Kane's well within his right to do what he's doing? Do you think the club are well within their right to do what they're doing? And where do you see Kane playing for this season and then the season after that? Do make sure to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed this video. Plenty more football videos to come in the future. Eat, skeet, delete. Have a lovely day.